Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Monday, June 17th, around 4:40 in the afternoon Eastern Time. Now, I want to try to make this short, but I may wax on a bit from time to time. Uh, as you may recall, I have said that I'm going to be reading at this esteemed man's funeral here tomorrow, and I no. Let's put it this way. Knowing how the logistics sometimes happen at my church, I decided that I'd better figure out a way to print up something large enough for me to read. When you're standing at the lectern, you're sort of, and I got to put my eyeglasses down and all that kind of nonsense now. And yeah. And so I was, we use the NRSV version in our church. Oh, King James Version, Authorized Version, where art thou? Anyway, so we use the NRSV version, which I think actually, as far as the translation goes, is probably better from the Hebrew scriptures. But it's just not euphonious, is it? It's just not beautiful, is it? Well, it's not all that bad. It's not all that bad in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, it reads like a committee report. All of those out you with MBA degrees will know exactly what I'm talking about. So after a certain amount of toing and froing, and you'll recall that the genesis of this little vlog was me learning how to use a computer. So I was, what do I download? How do I download Bibles? How do I, is it a PDF file? What do I do? What do I do? So I horsed around, as one does. Click, click, horse around. Click, click, horse around. And I'm going to have to take class over to Apple about how to use either iText Pro or Pages, or both of them, because clearly I know there's got to be a way to do this. I know there's got to be a way to, if you copy and paste something into the iText window, I know there's got to be a way that you can change. If you can't change the typeface, you've got to be at least able to change the size of that font. You may not be able to change the font. If I never saw Helvetica again in the rest of my life, I wouldn't be, any sadder. But I would love to be able to, well, particularly because if I'm printing out something to read, I want something in big print. Now, they may well indeed have something printed out for us to read at church tomorrow, but I'm going to tell you right now, in my experience, that often is not the case. And sometimes that can turn into a big adventure. And Joe doesn't want to have a big adventure tomorrow at this man's funeral. So, nonetheless, here, I'll display what I was finally able to produce. See? Second letter of Paul to Corinthians, and it's chapter 4, 16, down to chapter 5, verse 9. Now, of course, they cut it off at verse 9 because verse 10, which is the actual end of the paragraph, is, for all of us must appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each may receive recompense for what has been done in the body, whether good or evil. Now, the U.S. Episcopal Church, or as I like to call it, the Looney Tune Church, is not big on sin and judgment. Enough said. Anyway, so I got a lesson. I downloaded an NRSV Bible on logos.com. That was $10 because it's under copyright. And then I downloaded, you know, an authorized version with the Apocrypha from some other website, the name of which escapes me at this moment. So if I have to sort of print this out on an emergency, basis in the future, I'll be able to do so. So that took up the better part of about 2.5, 3 hours this morning. Well, I'm slow. It's a computer lesson. It's a learning curve. It's excuse me. It's how you learn. It's how you interact with the world. That's good. Well, it's how you interact with the world. Whether it's good or not, that's how you interact with the world. So, much to my surprise and delight, by the way, our rector sent us a very detailed set of instructions about tomorrow's festivities, so to speak. And, he thanks us for our willingness to serve. Well, my Lord, who wouldn't be willing to serve at this? And then he gives us the assignments, in order of procession, you march in and then how you go out. We're going to have a thurifer who was our seminarian for pretty much all of last year. Oh, he's a magnificent individual. Our crucifer, who's a sort of a quasi-retired nurse from up by Marysville, Ohio, who's one of my favorite folks. It's the big, heavy brass boy, too. It's like, then the torches. Now, torches. See, this is something that's completely unnecessary. This is completely unnecessary. We don't need these are now. Ideally, they're like wax candles, and you carry them in and all. But come on, it's windy in there. The windows are open. The breezes are blowing. These aren't wax candles, though. At least we have a fighting chance because it's filled with this fuel oil. So you have these little tanks of fuel oil on this stuff. And, well, if you had a large enough wick, they might actually stay on. Okay, well, they certainly stay on when they're in the church for the most part, although sometimes one of them blows out. So I'm carrying one of them. I'm also doing the New Testament reading, which is the thing I just showed you that I've spent a lot of time trying to print off and figure out how to do. Pardon me. And so my judge buddy, retired judge buddy, is going to do the prayers of the people. Well, the intercessor, which is not the prayers of the people in the burial office service. Well, the pre-communion burial service, and then you have, and then there's any of the clergy that showed up, and I imagine there'll be a lot of clergy that are vested. Well, not all of them will have vested, but I imagine a lot of them will have done anyway. So they're going to be marching in, so that'll take a while. And then we have a wooden cross. It's much lighter. Well, because sometimes the younger kids can't carry that big brass bad boy. So, And then we have our let's see, assisting priest, and then we have our rector, and then we have Bishop Price, who's our well, he's our retired Bishop Suffragan or Suffragan. I don't know whether it's G or J sound on that letter. And then Bishop Breidendahl, our diocesan ordinary, our real, the bishop. And so then they're going to sit where Charles sits. Well, they better have a big reinforced chair for Bishop Price. I'm going to tell you that right now, because that man is a very, very large man. You see him get into his car when he drives off after coming up here. I mean, that thing is sagging down on one side. Well, sometimes not, because his son, his son's now down in the Caribbean. Anyway, his son's now down in the Caribbean, and when they were there, of course, it seemed pretty even. Now it was pretty low in spring. But, nowadays, Bishop Price gets in, so down the road it goes. God bless Bishop Price. He's great. Now, he went over to deal with the Pittsburgh thing, after they seceded and all that nonsense. And frankly, I think it was great they seceded. I think they seceded for the exact right reasons. But, I'm big on loyalty, too. I'm big on loyalty. Even if I disagree with stuff, I'll be loyal. Even if it's against my best judgment. See, that's a fault on my part, isn't it? In any case, so, hope they have a chair sufficient to support this man. God bless him. And then our assisting priest, Sister Karen, or Karen, whatever her name is pronounced, will read the gospel. And then there's a bunch of stuff about the bishops are going to do the bread, and they don't need Judge Shaw or the judge and I to do the wine. And then it says going out will be the same as coming in, and we're going to go right out down the stairs into the memorial garden for the interment. It's the ashes, He's going to go down the big hole, the big common hole. I like the idea of going down the big common hole. The communion of saints, you're all together, all the believers together. I like that. Well, anyway, so that we're going to zoom around and do that. And then he says he's going to dismiss us and get us out. I will do some sort of dismissal to get us out of there. I thought that was a great line. Well, anyway, so I emailed him back and said, given the fact that once you take those torches out in the wind, they're going to blow out. It's going to be windy tomorrow anyway, by the weather forecast. Should we just park them and go out, or what? He says, if they go out, they go out. Okay, well, that's an answer. Ask and answer. I like that. See, that wouldn't have happened 3 or 4 years ago. He's been up here now. He's coming up on 5.5 years, and he's now actually learning how to not just assume everybody, and he doesn't mumble anymore about telling people how to do things. He tells people how to do things. I think that's great. The man is improving. The man is a good guy, and he's improving, and I think it's great. Well, it's a learning curve, isn't it? I'm more passive aggressive than probably anybody out there. Well, no, not more, but I can give them a close run for their money. And this is the internet after all. My word, I got the whole world out there. And I can't say I've demonstrated a willingness to learn quite as much as he, well, maybe a little earlier. It's hard to say though. Still, he, he pointed at me one day during a sermon and said, well, here's Joe Kersey, and anybody that knows him knows that he and I are pretty much the opposite sides of the same coin. And that's absolutely true. Well, I'm all set. I mean, I think I'm all set. You never know if you're all set. I mean, I've got my relatively large print stuff I can read. I'm good to go. Now I'm going to tell you right now what's probably going to happen. Is I'm going to walk in there and everything's going to be changed. I'm going to tell you a story about the first time I actually met Bishop Breidenthal in the flesh. It was actually during our rector's installation, and it was in official installation. I mean, he'd been our rector for about 3 months, but he was going to be officially installed. A new ministry and all that, and so Charles was running around in his little white surplice. He likes to wear a surplice when the bishops are around. I guess that demonstrates submission. Y'all can take from that what you want. And he starts to have this nosebleed. Well, he's always said he has nosebleeds very easily when he gets stressed. Well, he had a big bad one then. I got some nasty insect, flying around me. Anyway, so he had this nosebleed, and when I walked in, he had about a whole roll of toilet paper shredded up in a wicker basket in what was then his office, and I in my line of work, I could estimate blood loss. I thought, well, the man's lost about 400 cc's of blood out of his nose here. Of course, you don't know how much he swallowed. I mean, he's probably swallowed almost an equal volume. And of course, he's starting to feel lightheaded. And I said, you need to go to the hospital and get this thing packed off. Of course, Bishop Breidenthal's in there. And of course, he's looking like he's about ready to throw up, but he's trying not to look like he's going to throw up because, he wants to be, pastoral and offer support. So I was reading that day, and I hadn't put on my dress yet, and so we got Charles off to the hospital to get packed off, get his retropharynx and his retronasal area packed off and stuff. And so then Bishop Breidenthal feels he has to be social. Well, I guess I felt I had to be social too. So being relatively unskilled in social interaction, I decided to start telling medical stories. Well, that apparently did not have a calming effect on Bishop Breidenthal. He acted even more like he was getting ready to throw up. And I thought to myself, I bet if I just melted out of the room, he'd get up and feel a lot better. But I decided not to leave. I decided to just stand there and look at him. Because this man, during his election process had been a very arrogant individual and decided, it's like he had adopted the in-your-face policy of the U.S. Episcopal Church. I'm not a fan of the U.S. Episcopal Church. I'm not a fan of the in-your-face policy of this presiding bishopess we've got. And I wasn't a fan of Breidenthal at that point. I will say that since then, he has modified his position a lot in terms of listening to a lot of the other bishops that disagree with him, and 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 his remarks are far more loving of the people that disagree with him. So I don't. Well, we'll see what he says. No, he's not going to preach tomorrow. Bishop Price is going to preach tomorrow, so that's okay. Well, he's gotten a lot better. He's gotten a lot better. He likes to wear this big emerald green satin chasuble that somebody gave him, and he looks like one of these ash beetles that are killing all of our trees around here. You know, so when he does that, he looks like a big emerald ash beetle, you know, presiding over communion. It's odd. Well, I undoubtedly will probably give an account of how things go tomorrow. I hope, poor old Marge. God bless Marge and Tom. You know, Tom's his son and Andrew's his grandson. One hopes this all goes well. I mean, hopefully we're not going to get a lot of rain. We might get a little rain, but I hope we don't have an oil fire from these oil-filled torches. Who knows what may happen in the midst of a church service? Oh, there's Paul. Hey, Paul.
Hi, guys. Whoop. Oh. Yeah, I'm home.
Yep, Paul got home safely. That's always a cause for rejoicing around here. So I'm going to say bye-bye now, YouTubers.